rookies are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from offseason to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. It's time for the news update, and there are some news coming out of San Francisco about what's going to happen with their off-season training program. Of course, they have been doing OTAs, but minicamp is coming. But the San Francisco 49ers have announced today that they are canceling the third and final week of organized team activities and moving up their mandatory minicamp to next week. This is not uncommon for Kyle Shanahan. This is something that he's done pretty consistent. It means everyone's meeting their marks. So what he likes to do is get it in, get it done, and then give the players more time off. The team's mandatory minicamp was initially scheduled to begin on June 13th and run through June 15th. It will now begin on June 6th with practices at 10:40 a.m. on Tuesday and 10:50 on Wednesday. Both sessions will be open to the media, so there will be a lot of attention on the mandatory minicamp and a lot of news that will be coming from reporters that will be on hand. Head coach Kyle Shanahan and a few of selected players are scheduled to speak with reporters on Tuesday, and defensive coordinator Steve Wilks and players will field questions for the media on Wednesday. Initially scheduled to be a 3-day minicamp, the 49ers will likely give the players a third day off from practice, and they will have done as they have done in previous years, and hold a family day before breaking for summer. Veteran players won't report back to the team until training camp begins in late July. Many of the younger players, including all rookies, will stick around at the facility during the break. So this is something Kyle Shanahan likes to do. Players get close to 40 days off before training camp. It allows them to recover, get time with family, get prepared, because when it comes to training camp, they have to be ready to go. And they have to be mentally prepared. And this is what Kyle Shanahan likes to do. It's something that he's done pretty consistently with his time in San Francisco, and it seems to have worked well for him. The players seem to like it. So he's continuing with his philosophy. And you know what? The 49ers are going to have minicamp next week, and then they're going to take some time. And so there'll be a little bit of a dead period as far as 49ers news. But this is big news because now we know when 49ers minicamp is going to be. It is mandatory. All players will be on hand. So expect to hear about Nick Bosa, probably hear from him on Wednesday when Steve Wilks hits the podium as well. So the 49ers are moving forward with minicamp and going past OTAs, which means their off season is almost over. We have about one more week of 49ers offseason, and then it will be just preparing for training camp. And, of course, training camp is preparing for preseason. Another story that hit the news this week was Brock Purdy is throwing the football. And last week, the report was Brock Purdy was going to start throwing, but you didn't know exactly what that meant. Tom Pelissero said on the NFL Network that not only was Brock Purdy throwing, but he was throwing a football. It wasn't like just a tennis ball or a racquetball or anything like that, but he was throwing an actual football. John Lynch went on to say he's very encouraged from the progress that Brock Purdy is on. And what that means is Brock Purdy is ahead of schedule, just slightly. But of course, last week we went over the fact that it's 10 to 12 weeks normally, and he's about that 11-week mark. So good news for the 49ers as Brock Purdy continues his rehabilitation from his UCL injury, and he's working his way back to the 49ers roster, which could be nice. It could signal if he's ahead of schedule, and of course, you don't want to rush him. You want to make sure he is fully healed, but it does appear now that he may be ready in time for some part of training camp, which could definitely add a little spice to the 49ers quarterback room and quarterback competition, even though John Lynch has been steadfast in his belief that Brock Purdy is, of course, the leader in the clubhouse to be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Next up, the San Francisco 49ers and Las Vegas Raiders, of course, are going to be playing their preseason matchup this year, but they're also going to hold two joint practices before that game happens at Allegiant Stadium. So the 49ers are going to have those practices. This is according to Matt Miyoko of NBC Sports Bay Area. He says they were going to hold their joint practices on Thursday, August 10th and Friday, August 11th. And then they're going to play their game on Sunday, August 13th. So this is, we referenced this last week, but now we got the official dates. So the 49ers are going to be actually having their scrimmages, their inter-squad scrimmages against the other team before the first preseason game, where normally they did it between game 1 and game 2 of the preseason. So this will be interesting. 49ers, of course, going to work with the Raiders. It'll be fun because Jimmy Garoppolo could be available. We'll see if he is officially over his injury and his surgery. So the 49ers are going to get work. It'll be the return of Clelin Ferrell. There's so many interesting moving parts with this. But the 11th and 12th will be those days in Las Vegas, and then the 49ers will take on the Raiders on Sunday, August 13th. Now, a little bit of OTA news just to kind of go over is Sam Darnold began taking his first team reps. So Sam Darnold is now getting what Kyle Shanahan said it was going to balance out and that he was going to get those first team reps. So you have reps going to Trey Lance for the most part, and now Sam Darnold. So both guys getting accustomed to taking snaps to the first team. It is changing a little bit because there were players that returned to the sidelines and to practice for the 49ers, including Deebo Samuel. So the 49ers are getting it closer. Next week, of course, at minicamp, we will see exactly if the 49ers split reps evenly between the two guys and how much work they get to actually have with the first team unit. There hasn't really been a first team unit at OTAs with so many players that haven't been practicing, but we heard both players hooked up and had some good times with Brandon Ayuk during practice. So both quarterbacks are progressing nicely, and it looks like the 49ers feel pretty comfortable with their quarterback room with those two guys, and of course with Brock Purdy getting better and better and increasingly clear that he may be ready for training camp. Now, next up is the fact that when Chris Foerster took the podium, he talked about his interior offensive line, and he was very clear. There had been some questions about John Feliciano potentially starting. Of course, he went on with Brad Graham of the SF Niners and said he came here to start. And it appears Chris Foerster has still got Spencer Burford, Jake Brendel, and Aaron Banks as his interior offensive line, meaning Feliciano is going to have to do something to impress. Of course, he said he will play the best player, but he felt those three players definitely had the heads up to start. And so the 49ers look to have a lot of continuity on the inside. If those three guys start, that means it's the same group as last year to go with Trent Williams. The lone difference will be Colton McKivitz starting at right tackle for Mike McGlinchey. And then the news that a lot of people have been looking forward to is Nick Zakelj. We started to hear rumblings about him being more physical, him changing his body, working on his athleticism, all those things at the facility during the offseason. And now he's began taking snaps at OTAs. Now, it came with some mixed results. He struggled a little bit, but that's not anything anyone should be worried about. It happens, especially with young players, and getting used to snapping to different quarterbacks. You just have to get used to having that hand put the ball where it needs to be, and having your hand between your legs and still having to make a block can be difficult. You can sometimes leave the area before you get the ball to the quarterback, was the most important thing. They will get this ironed out, but I think it does show the versatility that Nick Zakelj has and the 49ers like about him. So I'm encouraged about his potential and how he's going to continue to develop. And maybe the 49ers could potentially have two backup centers on this roster with Nick Zakelj and John Feliciano. So that's good news for the 49ers as they look to continue to build this roster for the future. So we're getting OTA updates out of Santa Clara. Next week will be minicamp, and of course there'll be a lot of news that comes along with it. The first sign that Nick Bosa is going to be in the house. So more news coming your way in no time at all right here on 49ers Cutback. Thank you guys so much for coming through and checking it out. If you would, please like the video so I can do more stories like this. Let me know if you like these kinds of episodes. Subscribe to the channel, on the push for 4K and getting close. We're about George Kittle away, 85 subscriptions away from getting to 4K. Really appreciate everyone's support. There's going to be more content coming your way, including some more red shirt rundown. Going to get into Leroy Watson and then Tay Martin. Big play Tay. It's going to be a fun weekend. I hope you guys are all looking forward to all the content that's going to be coming out on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.